This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. Abortion pills are a big problem these days. Who gave it to us? Who is to blame? Who should we be angry at? Where did these pills come from? We will educate you on a very dicey episode of the 40 Days for Life podcast. And if you are listening to this the day that it comes out, it is Tuesday, April the 14th. So tax day is tomorrow for those of you who are not panicked and probably need to be. Do your taxes. But more importantly, you can watch our webcast tonight at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern on our YouTube channel. So please come to that tonight. If you are listening to this on April the 14th, we will cover a lot going on in the pro-life movement, give you a full update of the recent 40 Days for Life campaign this last spring, and let you know what we have in store for the future. So be sure to join us tonight on that 8 p.m. Central webcast. So today we are going to talk about the man behind the abortion pill. And in our search for that man, we can eliminate one candidate who was not behind the abortion pill, but is behind many other destructive things that go on in our culture. And that is my co-host, Mr. Steve Carlin.
I'm going to take that because it's the least mean intro I've gotten in quite some time, so I'm grateful.
You have lowered the standards.
Take the victories where I can get them. Take the dub.
One day I'm just going to say, and the greatest human to ever be born, Mr. Steve Carlin, but that's not today, and I don't know actually if I'll ever do that.
What we can say today, as we'll hear about in a little bit when we get to the
Everybody's
subject.
going to look good and feel good about themselves after we finish with the old doc here.
Only the second worst Steve on the podcast this week.
We also have Dr. Haywood Robinson present. We will need a good doctor to dissect the bad doctor that we are going to talk about. This is great. I'm actually surprised we haven't covered the man behind the abortion pill yet. So this is a really, was this your idea? Whose idea is this?
No,
I'll
I
give
think
you credit
that
for it.
was your idea.
Was this your
Steve,
idea?
wasn't it?
I was working on an entirely different project from the podcast related to the abortion pill. I was like, hey, there's a lot of good information here that we might want to put on a podcast. So here we are.
So I'm going to take the first step. The bad man, the bad doctor who gave us the abortion pill. It stinks when this happens where he has a really pretty cool name.
Yeah.
Because he's French. All right. Dr. Étienne-Émile Baulieu. Is that right? Did you like the Baulieu?
I did like that.
I think you have to do where you can't say croissant. You have to say croissant.
Yeah.
I can't say that word. The jerks in Paris will get mad at you because you don't have enough in your croissant.
Yeah, before we went to France...
Who won the war? Get a white flag. You're not going to tell me how to talk.
Before we went to France, my wife was insisting I learn a little bit of French, and so I studied a little bit of French. And at one point, I just kind of threw a temper tantrum like a 6-year-old. I was like, this language is stupid, and they just mumble their words and cut half of the words off. And my wife, who loves French and knows some French, said, you're not wrong. You still have to learn it.
Well, they do arguably have the best food in the world. And yes, so there's a lot that I love about France. I love their saints for sure. I love their history besides the obviously the revolution, which didn't go well. And their food, their desserts, they have mastered the art of butter.
Yes.
I may not even like French food. I may just like butter, but it's amazing.
I would describe myself as a Francophile. I'll complain about the language, but I love all else about France. Creme brulee.
Yes.
I didn't know what brulee meant until we went and saw where Joan of Arc was bruleed. And
no one knows what brulee is.
But then when you see where Joan of Arc was bruleed, then you're, it's just burnt cream.
I still think that's made up. I just think they make up cool names. So you mentioned that Étienne, so Dr. Étienne-Émile Baulieu, he is the father of the abortion pill. We'll get to that. But you educated Haywood and I by telling us that Étienne is French for Steve.
Yes, I think.
Did you make that up?
No, I just Googled it right before. I was pretty sure it was the case, and then I Googled it to confirm.
I found it on the internet.
I don't spread misinformation on this podcast. It's all real as it gets.
You spread it when we're not recording.
Correct.
But while we're recording, it's all facts.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's my truth serum.
No
that-
fake news.
Okay, because they have a lot of Jean Paul and who was the guy we recently had to cover? Jean Marc? There was a Jean Marc somewhere.
Yeah. He was the guy we cited, I think, on the one Heather wrote. I think we need to refer and defer to Dr. Haywood on how to pronounce this because he sounded like he knew. Plus, as we know from recent episodes of the podcast, I don't even know how to say English words properly, like vague and pagan. My mouth doesn't make the right shape, so I'm not going to get
vague.
French.
You say it was very vague.
Very vague.
Yeah. So
Hey there, guy.
You mess up some letters and you replace one, you're going to get in trouble with the woke crowd. You need to be careful.
That's all right. I can live with that.
You need to be very careful.
Yeah. Well, from my limited French in high school and television, that was pretty good for East Texas accent. I think it's something like Étienne-Émile Baulieu.
That's
oh
cool.
my gosh.
See, that sounds like, I feel like he just ordered a really decent bottle of wine.
Yes.
Well, that's you mentioned the food. You know, they have some pretty good grape juice there too, don't they?
I think so. I think the Bordeaux is probably as the great late Rush Limbaugh said. He said about Cuban cigars that it's like Bordeaux wine. It just comes from the best, area, and nothing can compete. And Cuban cigars are so good, not even the communists could mess them up.
Yeah.
That's always a good quote. So, okay, so Dr. Baulieu is the son of physician Dr. Leon Blum, who died when Baulieu was just 3 years old. So he loses his dad very young. And his mom's name, this is kind of sad, was Therese. Gosh, no disrespect to Saint Therese. And she was a feminist.
Yeah, so I think it's important for us to dig in a little bit to the background of the man behind the abortion pill because you kind of see some formative experiences here. He grew up, his mother was a feminist, he had no father. Right off the bat, there's left-wing politics around him. And when the Nazis occupied France, Dr. Baulieu, I'm thinking about, remember Tailspin?
Yeah.
And was it Jungle Book too, or just Tailspin? I don't know.
It's
Baulieu
Jungle
was
Book, yeah.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Jungle Book also.
Yeah. Okay. That's shows how.
And I think Baulieu is also the name of the candlestick in Beauty and the Beast.
Excellent.
Throw that out there.
So he took up arms with the communists. So obviously the Nazis are terrible and they ought to be resisted, but he kind of picked the wrong crowd to throw in with to oppose them. He became a communist, and in November of 1944, he participated in the kidnapping and the execution of an imprisoned Vichy official. He was the photographer. So they kidnap a guy who they think is cooperating with the Nazi occupation. They execute him, and as a youth, he is the photographer for propaganda purposes.
He films it.
Which he described the extrajudicial killing as, quote, justifiable in the context.
Well, he's on the right track to invent the abortion pill. That's for sure. He also liked to hang out with artists like Andy Warhol, who later described the abortion pill as, what is that?
Oove?
The oove.
I think it's like the egg. Like, this is like he's hanging out with these artistic friends and they're creating and they're painting their soup cans and all the weird crap that they're doing. And he's like, I could be a creator. I'm an artist too. And his magnum opus would later become the abortion pill.
Unbelievable.
Sad. That's very sad.
Okay, here we go. So Dr. Baulieu, he gets married. He has numerous adulterous relationships. So he's getting around.
Abortion very helpful in such a case, I imagine.
Wow, Steve's going hardcore. And he aborted his kids out of wedlock. Okay, he acknowledged an affair with the also married actress Sophia Loren.
Boy,
this is remarkable. That's real? That's true?
that's
This
high
is the
cotton.
podcast.
He slept with Sophia Loren.
That's high cotton, man.
You got me with that. Okay, it's high cotton. All right, Baulieu's wife remarked, what could he do? He fell in love.
I can't do the French accent, but I feel like that sounds more compelling.
It's very French of them, where the wife is happy about the affair.
Yeah.
Okay. He's in love. Of course, he should be cheating on me. All right. So his wife died in 2015.
Yes.
So they lived a long time.
Yes.
We should get to the point. Is he alive right now?
He died just like a year ago or so.
Gosh. Okay. Well, he must have been old.
He must have been in his
Very.
90s,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
In his
Yeah, he's
right.
still like working right up to the end, sadly.
That's not good for us. Okay. So his wife dies in 2015. The next year, he married a woman who he had been with since the 1990s, which is like, what was he, 70?
So it's kind of crazy because when he died, the obituaries are kind of coming out and they're saying he was divorced from his first wife. But you look a little closer, and as far as I can tell, it appears to me they stayed married legally. They just separated, and he was off with whatever. In this case,
So this is where the French wife was a boys will be boys kind of.
it sure
gal.
seems that way.
Okay, so he's out running around with. Sophia
I mean, they
Loren.
weren't living together. They just never got divorced. I think he and the wife, and then so once his wife passed, he was free to marry, and I guess took advantage.
I don't know why he would marry in the first place, but who knows? Okay, so he
That's the
marries.
background.
He marries a lady that he was with throughout the 1990s.
Yeah.
So if his wife died in 2015, he had to be like 85 or 80, right? Do you know how old he was when he died?
I think he was pushing 100.
Oh my gosh. He got remarried when he was like 85? Okay.
Living the dream.
Still moving.
That's right. That's right. I
Still
mean,
moving and grooving.
still moving and grooving. Okay, so Dr. Baulieu sets his sights on an unpregnancy pill. So that was the original term that he used. Okay, so in 1961, he receives...
An update
Oh,
here.
go ahead.
He died at 98 years old.
You
So
were right.
he was 88 when he got 87 or 88 when he got remarried.
Young man.
Wow. Okay. I don't...
Shows his commitment to marriage that even
Yeah,
at
yeah.
advanced
I mean,
age,
is he all that bad, you know? So
we
okay.
complain about the disrespect we see toward marriage in our culture, and here we see someone upholding it, and we're going to do a whole podcast criticizing him.
So if he were on trial and we're sitting here saying you are single-handedly responsible for the deaths of millions of people and your life was one of the most destructive in the history of France and Western civilization, he's going to go, I never disrespected marriage.
Yeah, I mean, even while he was cheating on
Besides
his wife
my
with
adultery.
Sophia Loren.
I never lied to her face. I spoiled her. Okay. Okay, so in 1961, he gets a speaking invitation from somebody he was mentored by, who is Gregory Pincus. And that guy is known as the father of the oral contraceptive pill. So here we go. So his mentor is the guy that invented the pill.
Yeah. So Pincus here urged Baulieu to visit Puerto Rico. I'm going to at least pronounce Puerto Rico right if I can't pronounce anything else right. Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
He urged him to visit Puerto Rico to check out clinical trials of the birth control pill.
This is where Margaret Sanger got in trouble, remember, because she was experimenting contraceptives on the Puerto Rican women because, after all, they're Puerto Rican, who cares? And, that was one of the things that Planned Parenthood later came out during the woke stuff and said, that probably wasn't a good thing. So it's interesting all these people are wrapped up
And we'll
together.
get into that a little bit here because Baulieu said, when I saw what they were doing in Puerto Rico, it was remarkable for the treatment of women. Okay, well, what were they doing in Puerto Rico? Pincus, doing this research, targeted the island because it was full of poor, uneducated women.
Yeah, buddy.
And after this, the trial is somewhat of a disaster. Nearly 1 in 5 participants complained of nausea, dizziness, headaches, stomach pain, vomiting. Even the medical director of the Puerto Rico Family Planning Association, who was in charge of these trials, even she said the pill caused, quote, too many reactions to be generally acceptable. 3 participants died, and Pincus just said, I think it's psychosomatic.
Well, high dose, estrogens. At this time, these oral contraceptives were a lot higher doses. And high doses of estrogen in healthy women make them have these side effects. And that's just the way it is.
But he said it was psychosomatic, and we've got a professor at the University of Puerto Rico here, Lourdes Lugo Ortiz. She says, quote, "They even said that many of the effects were psychological because we Puerto Rican women are hyperactive emotionally."
That's rough. In other words, you women are just crazy.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you. Don't blame the science. You're a bunch of wacko Puerto Rican chicks.
Bring that to a marital dispute.
Oh,
honey,
man.
I think you're overreacting. You're emotionally hyperactive.
I don't think the doctor was very woke.
No.
He's definitely ignoring the Me Too movement, and he's definitely ignoring the, hey, we can go and experiment on them. You know, they're Puerto Rican and poor.
What might be curious is what they actually told these undereducated women. They might not even told them that they were taking birth control pills. They may have told them they were taking vitamins or anything and give them a small amount of bananas or food or whatever or money and just observe what the effects were. They were probably not even informed as to what was happening to them.
They were not, in fact, told that they were part of a clinical trial. That was not disclosed.
Okay.
And they also were not told that there could be any dangerous side effects.
So I guess that means they weren't paid.
I do not know that.
That seems like a stretch that they would be compensated if they didn't even know they were part of a clinical trial. Who knows what they told them, but besides, take this.
Something
Don't
that's
complain.
mildly interesting about this is Pincus was such an ideologue that it wasn't even that he was just taking advantage of these women. He thought that the benefits of birth control were so advantageous that he wasn't even concerned. He was, even as this is all going on, he's promoting his pill to loved ones because he just thinks it's just the cat's meow in spite of all of these issues that are coming through from the, quote, emotionally hyperactive Puerto Rican women.
Well, he's doing all this in Puerto Rico, but then he kind of starts to build his psychopath resume. He legalizes birth control in France in 1966.
Yeah, this is Baloo here at this point. Which
Baloo,
I don't
yeah.
even. I'm not even attempting to pronounce it right. I'm thinking about Baloo the bear right now. But however it is, however you say it, Baloo is in France.
But I think Baloo really bad. Baloo the bear was a great guy. He would have
Yeah.
Really blew it.
He really blew it. He never would have endorsed abortion or RU46. Okay, so Baloo's time with Pincus hatched an idea of developing a molecule that could block progesterone to abort unborn babies. This is really scary. I hope this wasn't done around like a campfire. But they get this idea that we can basically create the super contraceptive pill and block progesterone to abort unborn babies.
We're hitting a point at this point in the episode where if we wanted to set out to make an episode about the eugenic nature of abortion, we could not have come up with a better fictional story that we had written. Because he goes from Puerto Rico to Calcutta, India, where he witnesses a poor woman holding her dead baby, and she's accompanied by 2 other children. And he says, what if we could develop an unpregnancy pill? We already dealt with the poor women in Puerto Rico. Now we're in India. Gosh, there sure are a lot of people of color who should not exist or be reproducing.
Yeah. So here's his quote: "The fatalism of extreme poverty and pregnancies. At that moment, I decided to stand up for women to make sure they could make their own decisions about their bodies. It gave meaning to my life as a doctor and researcher."
Well, you know, this is doctor and researcher. He's using the term very loosely. You know, when we say science, that's usually using the scientific method to do something that is generally to observe nature and explain it and have that knowledge for humankind. When we have science, it's generally if you're looking at a drug or whatever, it's to improve health. So this is really, we got to recognize, is this science or is this Frankenstein, right?
Ooh.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
Anytime you have a doctorate and you come up with a product, that doesn't mean that's science. He had a hypothesis, a thought. well, I think I'll just block this hormone. Well, this is not something new. We can go to the Bible, we can look in history and see where they would take men and they would turn them into eunuchs, right? That would take away that particular hormone or their ability to reproduce, because you wouldn't want the men to do things to the queen or the princesses. But yeah, this is not science. He had an idea, and he unlaunched a Frankenstein that we're living with today.
Something I note here, Sean, you just read the quote. You can tell this guy is an egomaniac because
There's exclamation points in the quote. That was, I mean, there are that he put there.
Yeah, you can tell he's an egomaniac because this is like he's the artist now, and now I decided to stand up for women to make sure they could make their own decisions. After he comes from Puerto Rico and is admiring how they didn't even tell them they were part of an experiment.
Yeah. Well, this is the beginning of his mission, which is very dangerous and required in all of eugenics, that everybody stay calm. Please congratulate me, for I will make heaven on earth.
Yeah.
And this is the beginning of his heaven on earth, and which is going to be a disaster. Here we go. Here's another quote. It really caused an emotion for me, which has persisted all my life. I think always of Calcutta as something which has pushed me to really work hard. Can we please stop here and just look at the contrast of somebody else who was getting started in Calcutta around that time? And she wasn't looking at everybody saying, boy, I wish you would kill your babies. She was dragging the poorest of the poor and the sickest of the sick off the street. So a little bit of
if Mother Teresa could answer, she could just say, how very white of you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sick the way.
I think Mother Teresa may have taken him and slapped him around a bit, and that would have cured a lot of problems.
And she definitely wasn't using exclamation points in her self-congratulatory.
No.
And this is the point at which I decided that I would set out to. No.
Yeah. Gosh, I think of Calcutta often. Get over yourself. Here we go. Enter RU486.
Things get a little crazy here. He wants to create his unpregnancy pill, block progesterone, and be able to kill babies in the womb. The problem here for him is he works for a country called Ruse. Again, I don't know how to pronounce things that aren't English because I can barely pronounce things that are in English. But he works for this company, and the top executive at the parent company for Russell Uclove was a pro-life Catholic.
Oh.
So he's like, I want to create this abortion pill, but if I'm going to make any headway on it, I need to come up with some plausible other use for it. I'm not doing this for abortions. I'm creating this pill to heal this health issue or that health issue. And the fact that it can cause abortions will maybe reveal that after we get this produced.
This is very practical. So he's got to get around the pro-life Catholic executive.
Yes, okay. Exactly. So he's got to have an excuse. So according to the New York Times, quote from the New York Times, to avoid controversy in meetings with company officials, Dr. Baulieu said he emphasized a non-abortion related property of an anti-progesterone compound. So he's working with this guy who is one of his colleagues, George Teutsch, and he synthesizes mifepristone, which we now know as the abortion drug. What do we also call it? RU486. What is RU for? Russell Uclove. It was their 480. So we see where this is going here and where it's coming from. And so Teutsch is synthesizing mifepristone, and it's believed that the compound, the chemical compound, the drug, might be able to treat health problems like burns, wounds, and glaucoma. Baulieu knows this is really about abortion, but this is the sideshow that we are running here as an excuse to create the abortion drug.
This is really interesting.
Yeah, so Baulieu says he knew something nobody else did. This is another quote from him. He says, although neither Teutsch nor most of the others in the company initially realized it, this drug was also what I wanted, an anti-progesterone. So he's the whole operation is a ruse to create his unpregnancy pill.
But he's getting the funding from this corporation, which is really what I assume he needs. He needs the ability to create it, and he needs to tell them, we're going to use the AR-15 for hunting hogs, but really he's about to invade a country.
That's a great analogy.
But this is just ridiculous. From basic physiology, I don't know how glaucoma is related to progesterone. Excuse me. How is that related to wounds or burns? He's making this
Okay.
all up. And that's the same thing that happened in this country when, Bernard and Nathanson and all of them just made everything up. They had a fertile society and press where they could say anything and they'd lap it up. So it's, oh, well, this could definitely help glaucoma, wounds, and make you handsome at the same time.
Yeah.
When he's saying something, it's really my unpregnancy drug. Well, the other thing, there's no such thing as unpregnancy. I always tell women and let them know, once you're pregnant, you're already a mother. There's two possible dispositions: the delivery of a live baby or a dead baby. You cannot go back and reverse fertilization. Impossible.
The bell
And he
has
knew
been rung.
exactly what he was. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he had people who just fell for him. He probably had a really wonderful accent. He probably knew how to throw terms around that flew over people's heads, but he really knew what he was putting together.
And to your point on that, it's interesting that what we don't hear when we're out on the sidewalks from abortion supporters is they'll say everything. Well, you're against miscarriage care. No one's out there saying you anti-choicers are even against glaucoma care. You're against burn care. No, those uses obviously never developed.
There had to be some other doctors involved, though, that were definitely either supporting him or questioning him at whatever, Russell Uclef. All right, so he gets this to the 80s, and this is where everything gets turned up. So he starts testing it on animals and then moved into human clinical trials where it was discovered that the pairing of misoprostol with misoprostol was an effective abortion regimen. So this is where we get it in the 80s.
The modern abortion pills that are being used today, this is where they're really first used, is this clinical trial in the 80s.
That'd be interesting to look at the clinical trial that was used on humans. Imagine being the first women to take this stuff.
Well, this is one of the reasons why
dangerous now.
Every country does its own clinical trials, right? And
this is all in France. He's still in France.
he's still in France.
Is
This
the
has not
company
hit the US
German?
yet.
Or is it a French company? The Russell Uclef.
There's German roots. I can't remember exactly how that was all structured. But to your point about what do the clinical trials look like, the abortion pill was not approved in Canada until like 2015 or so, I want to say. Why is that? It was US in 2000, France earlier. Why was it as progressive and liberal and abortion friendly as Canada is? Why did it take until 2015? Oh, because during one of their clinical trials, a woman died.
Because they all the countries do their own clinical trials.
Yeah.
So a woman dies, and that's what delays it in Canada.
Yeah,
I'm
it's like, wow,
actually
this is
encouraged.
not great.
I'm still encouraged to hear that delayed the Canadians. I mean, they'd probably just be like, actually, it was assisted suicide. She's good. Okay, so in 1998, the French government approves mifepristone for market. So that's the first. So we're just 2 years behind them. I wonder why it's taken so long. I mean, maybe he's getting. France is completely secular at this point. It's not like this is, 1648. So
How long would you expect, doctor, a clinical trial to take?
yeah,
Well, some clinical trials can take a year and a half, because they have to get the trial approved by some board. Then you have to come up with your participants and divide them into groups. Sometimes you'll flip the groups, so it could easily take 2 years once you'd get the data, crunch the data, and then you have to have a journal, a peer-reviewed journal, to accept it and then publish it. So it could easily be 2 years. But sometimes if you have the favor of the government, we saw a particular, vaccine right here in this country that it had no clinical trial.
Which one was that?
And
never heard about
I
that.
don't know. It had something to do with the flu, didn't it? And it had not been tested in any trials. and because it was considered an emergency. You never know the inside politics on this. You can say, oh, well, it's really needed. We get this progesterone or this anti-progesterone drug out because glaucoma is causing a lot of people to be blind, and there's a lot of burn victims and wound victims, and so many women that want to be unpregnant. So we have a public burden for society that we have to fast track through. So we're going to mandate, that we're going to get the fast track, and that's what happened with that vaccine. It's never been tested on anything.
Yeah, but it had no fallout. Nobody got hurt from it. It's fine.
Of course not. But and then you
we need a COVID vaccine.
But do you remember
without
without mentioning any names, it was all about what is it? It's a science, and if you attack me, you attack the science. So there's a lot of psychological warfare probably going on between this esteemed guy who can, get over on an actress or whatever. This is a smooth operator. You don't come challenging this guy in the meetings and all that, right? Because you want to be like him one day.
You got to be careful, Haywood, because Steve, at his mantle in his family room, he actually took down a picture of he and his family, and he put up a framed photo of Dr. Fauci, and he worships it every night.
Also,
we call that idolatry.
Also, I am the smooth operator.
Hey, did you think we were going to do the Dirtbag Doctor of the Year podcast on the guy that invented RU-486? And who's going to come up? Dr. Fauci. We're not saying they're the same guy, but begs the question.
Yeah, have you ever seen them in the same room at the same time? I haven't.
That's right, I haven't. Yeah, I haven't. Of course, they could have been, but I think they're both the same age.
You heard it first here.
The clinical trial question here is interesting to me because you said it could take 2 years. Maybe they can grease the skids a little bit and speed it up. We have here that it moved from animal testing into human clinical trials in the 80s, but it wasn't approved for market until 98. So we're talking probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a decade. Is that surprising, or is that maybe it usually takes 2 years, but you wouldn't be surprised for it to take 10 years? Or does that tell us anything potentially that it took until 1998 to hit market?
I don't know, they may have been waiting for some corroborating studies. When you're doing good science, even though I don't look at it as a science, when the intent is to make a weapon, sometimes they'll want to do a redundant study or a confirmatory type study in another institution to bring validity to it. Sometimes there's other politics involved. You don't know. There may have been some resistance from this. I honestly don't know.
They said in 98, when the government approves it, facing protests and threats of a boycott, Russell Ucliffe, the company, decided to pull the drug. So that had to be a public outcry against it.
Yeah, they took it off the market. There were all sorts of things.
How would they know? Like, let's say you and I were French and we were living there and we're pro-life. How would we even know these studies were going on or this was going to come out?
I think just the fact that it did come out, like, now we've got a pill that can make you unpregnant.
So everybody goes berserk and says, y'all are crazy. You created a pill that would kill a baby. We're protesting, and they pull the pill.
Yeah, they took it off the market. Just like Walgreens ought to do, and just like Rite Aid and CVS ought to do.
So the French government, which had a significant stake in the company, threatened to give the patent to another company. So the government wants it out. The
government wants it out. This is the insane quote. I mean, we've had a variety of insane quotes. This is
probably one of the many worst moments after the French Revolution. This is how we got here.
Yeah. French Health Minister Claude Yvin, again, these names are hard. I'm sorry, population. French Minister Claude, I could not permit the abortion debate to deprive women of a product that represents medical progress. From the moment government approval of the drug was granted, RU-486 became the moral property of women, not just the property of a drug company.
Boy, isn't that sound? He was so proud of himself when he wrote that on the whiteboard. He's like, this is what I'm going to say. This is
moral property.
The moral property. It's just what a load of crap. And not just the property of a drug company. What's wrong with the drug company? They're making heaven on earth. I mean,
who made this guy God? we start off, I could not permit. Who elected you, Sheriff? Aren't we supposed to be doing this in a collective? I could not permit to deprive women of a product that
Minister Claude.
He decides it's progress. Is that really progress? He just makes all of this up.
No.
And how does it become these terms, the moral property of women? What does that mean?
He doesn't know. They just make this stuff up to sound good.
This goes into perpetuity from this scholarly gentleman. Oh, a quote that they probably etched in stone in some institution.
Health
They lay
minister.
down and they worship it. Oh,
Claude Evin. The only Claude I like is Jean-Claude Van Damme. And we need to
Great.
yeah, he's a tough guy.
He would take this guy
Tough
out
guy,
in
yeah.
2
Podcast
seconds.
on him.
Absolutely roundhouse this guy in the face. Okay, so fast forwarding. So in 1998, if we do the math, what is he, like 55? Is he 60? No, he's older than that.
So he was 90
He's
when he died.
98 when
98
he-
when he died last year. So back that up like 27 years or so. So yeah, his early 70s, I suppose.
Early 70s when all this
young man like me.
Yeah, exactly. But that's a long time from, 66, he legalizes birth control in France. But in 1944 is when he does the kidnapping and films the execution.
Child prodigy.
Think about that.
He's a Renaissance man. He's done it all.
He has. But what a horrific life.
Yes.
I mean, the sin begets sin, is clear, but just I'm going to control everything, and I'm going to be, God's gift to man, and just at no one moment, including his marriage and sleeping with Sophia Loren, was there a moment of reflection of, maybe I don't want to go down this road. And you would think, as a doctor and researcher, as he calls himself, that there would be a pause. And this is why we love Michael Crichton on this podcast, of just, we're so obsessed with whether we didn't stop to think if we should, from the great Jurassic Park.
There's another point here, and I've talked about it a bit in the book, Scalpel and the Soul. We go back to a young man, impressionable, we're still dealing with certain pathways. The male brain is not really fully mature till like late 20s, right?
I don't think mine's even gotten there yet.
Well, there's hope for you.
It depends on what part of the country you live in, Steve.
And let's look at what he does. Now, we're here in the studio, we've got all these cameras and everything, but here he is with his camera, and what's he filming and watching in execution? What he's watching is the taking of a human life, whether this person is guilty or not. I would guess he probably replayed that and watched that time and time again. Just like whether it be pornography, murder, or a lot of these movies now that mix the violence with sex. There you saw the foundation of what motivated him for the rest of his life, which was death.
Death and sex,
You
which are closely linked, according to Fulton Sheen, that a promiscuous society will be a violent society.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. And it's really, it's just wild to, nobody knows who this guy is. And his impact on our current culture, everybody throws out abortion bills. And even with Planned Parenthood, I know a lot of people know who Margaret Sanger is, but it takes some explaining and all of that. But the people behind some of our worst evils, and we rightly so throw Hitler out there a lot and pick on Hitler because he's just the most well-known. But these cast of characters behind all of this, these are the people that have really killed more people than Hitler or Stalin could have ever dreamed of, And so here's his legacy. Oh, the New York Times did a profile.
Oh, yeah.
I bet that was cute, him sitting on the couch. Okay. This is from the New York Times. His breezy, almost brash manner and hyperkinetic nature gave him the air more of a populist politician than of a meticulous medical researcher. That's so cute.
I would note here, too, that even a lot of his collaborators thought he was a jerk. Even the people, like, not that he was a jerk because he made this pill to kill tens of millions of people. They thought he was a jerk because he hogged the credit for it. Even those that he was working with were like, we helped make this deadly pill too.
We helped
nobody's giving us any attention
too. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, that's the egomaniac, and that's a lot of people who do extraordinary things, whether they be good or evil, are megalomaniacs. But this is hysterical. He is a highly decorated figure in France and around the world. After his death, French President Emmanuel Macron called him a beacon of courage who enabled women to win their freedom. How sad France has fallen. You just look at their history and what they've been through. And boy, you wanted to overthrow the church and kill religion and become an atheistic country. You got what you wanted.
I've thought at times that it would be worth, I don't know if there's enough there to do it, but I thought maybe it would be worth doing a podcast dedicated to the French Revolution, because so oftentimes we'll look at what went wrong in the world. Was it woke? Was it Marx? You can name a lot of different things, and so many of them got their root in the French Revolution.
They did, 100%, especially the stuff that we're dealing with now. That's probably the most underestimated event.
I agree 100%.
And even when I was doing history at A&M, and of course my main professor was a Brit, so he had no use for the French, so we picked on him a lot. But it's a pivotal point that leads to war, violence, stripping the dignity of the human person, and it was really, really quite horrific because you had a whole country do a complete, 180, and it's extremely, extremely tragic and sad, and it has real consequences. And I think because they're a charming people, like it's easy to pick on the Germans because it's like the T-shirt says, I'm not angry, I'm just German, because the Germans always sound angry. And of course we had the Holocaust, so they're easy to pick on. But the French are much more sly and were definitely more atheistic a few hundred years ago than the Germans were. And they always have an answer and a justification, and it sounds nice. And then they feed you and pour you wine, and you're like, oh, this country's great. But there is a great darkness to the French. And you could look at a place like New Orleans, which we love to pick on. But that French colony that was so nice, so charming, so beautiful, so religious, and the center of the slave trade in the United States. It's like, what was the last part? Oh, you know. And that, I think that's a good idea, actually, for a podcast, is the French Revolution. That'd cheer the audience up. We start cutting people's heads off. You could film it. You could be like Étienne.
It was justified in the context.
Well, the guy's head who we have to cut off is for sure producer John, because he's got a ponytail, and it would just help the YouTube channel, see that ponytail roll off,
This is one of the wild things. If we do this podcast, we'll cover it again. But when we were in France, we're at these gorgeous churches that are 1,000 years old, the Cathedral of Chartres. And a lot of the statues of the saints and the angels, their heads were all knocked off if they were in reach. So was that weathering, like the acid rain weakened the stone and then it fell off? No, they just went down and smashed statues the same way they spent the summer of 2020 smashing statues.
I'm sure you've encountered this too, and I encountered it when I spoke at that pro-life conference in France years ago, because we're meeting, the best people when we go to any given country. But the great sadness of these old French Catholic families who have just seen their country, because we mentioned the wine. It's funny because like in Bordeaux, a brand new winery is 300 years old. And just the richness of the country and how sad they are to see how secular they went and their imprint of the world with things like this and the French Revolution, and just them abandoning God so that they could create this intellectual atheism that would really invade most other countries. It really comes from France. Jean-Paul Sartre was not good for Western civilization at all.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk about New Orleans. You can also talk about Canada. I had the opportunity at the Canadian March for Life a number of years ago. Matt Britton and I were seated next to the Vicar General of the Diocese of Ottawa. And so Ottawa is kind of like right on the border between Ontario and Quebec. And so I said, just making small talk at dinner, what is it like trying to balance both cultures? And he had a lot of interesting things to say, but the one that stuck with me the most, and the thing that he said that broke my heart the most, is he said, in English, our profanities are typically related to sex or to like bathroom-related stuff. In French-speaking, Francophone Quebec, their profanities, he said, they would use sacred terms. They hated the church so much that you would say things like tabernacle or chalice, and those would be the ways that you would curse.
Wow.
Yeah. But there's another
Saved
factor
them
here.
from the Nazis. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the individual. This scientist wants something to help women become unpregnant, and it has all of these implications for helping women on the whole. But when we look at the history of it, and you know, I'm sure you were going to mention how this is the same company that, you know, manufactured the gassing for the Jews during the Holocaust. But when they say it's going to help, earlier we mentioned it would help burns, wounds, glaucoma. Well, they look at the Jew the same way, or their own infirmed. We're going to take the glaucoma out of the race. Get rid of the Jews. We're going to get rid of the wounds, and that. So there's kind of an individual thing, and then there's a collective mindset that they have for the betterment of the body. The German race, the Aryan race. We're going to take these things out of it. So we see it on a collective, and we see it on an individual mindset. It's kind of like the enemy. And again, we know this is all spiritual, but he deals with things on an individual and a collective and a leadership role, scientific, on so many areas. We see it manifested, but we got quite an enemy we're dealing with. But
it really is, and it as we've mentioned, it's the spiritual darkness. It's the abandonment of God has real consequences. And when you just look at this time period, which we definitely should do when we do the French Revolution, of the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment and all of these things that just very dangerous movements all happen at the same time. And that had real consequences for countries that were traditionally extremely faithful Christians. And I mean, we look back, it's like, it happened overnight, but it doesn't. Sin never just happens overnight. It builds. And this has real consequences. That's really telling what you said about if the statue of the saint was within arm's length, they would rip the head off. That's just anger, right? And you can go to a lot of secular countries that, you know, they love their churches and their Catholic culture. They don't believe it, but they, you know, it's nice and all that kind of stuff. They're not climbing up a ladder and ripping the head off. I mean,
no, the devil destroys.
It's a whole new level. We can't even stand the sight of you, you know. And
to your point, this is not in France, but I think it applies here. One of my favorite writings ever was Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I believe it was his address at Harvard when he came over. And he's talking about, this is late 70s, so the Soviet Union is in a bad place, and it's decaying, and the people are miserable, and the bread lines, and you name it, everything is terrible. He said, essentially, what happened? Why is it like this in our motherland, in Mother Russia? Why is it? He's like, there have been many explanations that have been offered on what happened to Russia, but I can't think of a better one than the one that are offered by the Russian grandmothers, that we have forgotten God.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's a great line. He said that at Harvard?
I believe that's where that came from.
It's so true, and sometimes it's not complicated whatsoever,
Mm-hmm.
is that you abandon God and there are real consequences. And it's like towards the end of his papacy, when Pope Benedict, I think it was Time magazine, or it was a secular, because he didn't do a lot of interviews with secular outlets, and they said, what is your greatest fear? And he said, my greatest fear is that the West lives as if God does not exist.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
And that's the key. Solzhenitsyn said some other remarkable things. Well, it starts first with leaving your covering. God, that protects us. That's our Kevlar against the enemy. Well, once that Kevlar is gone and you have a government that first starts putting forth lies, this is a combination of lies, okay? And we've talked about some of those lies. We saw what happened in the United States. Now, what goes along with the reinforcement of that now in Russia particularly, when the government tells you these lies, they also back it up with violence or the enforcement by the state. It's not just the lies alone, but it's a progressive thing that happens with first leaving God, then they'll tell you things like what we've been talking about. Oh, well, this is going to help your glaucoma. Abortion is going to make women happy and free. And if you don't believe it, we're going to close down your pregnancy resource center. We're going to bomb your church. We're going to do whatever. You have to agree with the state.
Yeah. We have a bit of good news that we can save here for the end. But I think that all of this, when you look at his legacy and just this time period of this going on in the background and what it means now for our society that we all live in, all the listeners and viewers, this is what we're dealing with is RE46. It's the biggest threat to us right now. And it's mainly due to this, lunatic. There has to be part of us that just has this detachment of this is why we have to look at our current state of Christianity more like the early church, and this is not worse than what St. Paul had to deal with. Right. I mean, they're going through Rome. He's a Roman citizen, so he's a traitor, all of this stuff. And it's completely pagan. And so what? He gets on his horse, he keeps going. And you look at all the early martyrs, all the evangelization for 300 years before Constantine makes Christianity legal. It's just this uphill battle amidst the paganism. And that paganism was just as aggressive as ours. We just have pills.
This should give us great confidence as we head into the November election, because there's a lot at stake and we need to vote and we need to take it seriously and all of those things. But let's say it goes poorly for pro-lifers. I can't imagine St. Paul or the apostles or any of the early church fathers throughout the centuries. This is our last chance. If Caligula takes power, it's all over. You keep going.
I have to make an obvious point that I think some of the listeners are thinking about when they're considering Dr. Baulieu. He is very fortunate that a certain French woman was not risen from the dead for a 24-hour period. Because if Joan of Arc would have been given like a leave from heaven, you get 1 day to go back, this guy's head's coming off. I mean, she's hunting him down, and he's like, let me explain. He's like, done. So just shout out to St. Joan of Arc. She didn't mess around. This is not her France. We appreciate what she did. But
one little encouraging note that I'll give is, I know I've mentioned this a lot because we're talking about France here, but when my family made our pilgrimage to France last year, it's just discouraging, and as you said, for the families that remain faithful there, it's troubling what has happened to their country, to say the least. All of that I found to be the case in Paris. When we got out of Paris, there were families in the church, there were children around. It was much different. It kind of reminds me of my friend from Philadelphia who said, well, people think Pennsylvania is liberal, but there's Philadelphia, and then we call the rest of it Pennsyltucky.
Which is very true. Totally true. Okay, so here's a little bit of good news. So he dies in May of 2025.
Not even a year ago.
I know. I'm not celebrating his death. I'm saying that he lived long enough, and apparently he was not very happy in his later years about the overturning of Roe.
Oh, poor baby.
Parting gift.
I don't know what this says about me. Obviously, my first and foremost consideration is I hope he repented in the salvation of his soul.
Of course.
But there's something about me that finds deep satisfaction where you see someone who is an architect of great evil and they live long enough to see their legacy crumble in front of them.
To begin to crumble.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This has failed. You thought that you had progressed and we had reached the end of history and enlightenment, and instead,
That could have been a channel to repentance.
I hope so.
I mean, if he's 98 and he's laying there and he's sitting there and what's-her-face is gone, Sophia Loren, everybody's gone. There's no more parties. There's no more martinis. And he's just sitting there and he's like, I thought I was taking over the world. I built this. And it seems he was mentally with it the whole time. But you would just see, particularly judging America, the younger people and society at large is turning against this. And he would certainly say it for his homeland of France, which has far more conservative abortion laws than the United States. So it's, maybe that did lead to his conversion. We hope that. That would be my reason. I think that if Joan of Arc was let out of heaven for a day, that would have been the impetus of his conversion when she was sprinting towards him with her sword. But, it just...
I hope so. When this New York Times profile came out with the breezy, almost brash manner and hyperkinetic nature, I think that was the same profile that was after Roe. So he's like 96 at this point, still completely unrepentant, but the Lord is merciful. We don't
Hyperkinetic nature.
Yeah, at 98.
He's 98. He's laying there. He's barely breathing. Hyperkinetic? I don't know. And I know this is what journalists do, but we prop him up and he's this hero and all this. I just think as you get older, you take yourself less seriously, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
I'm saying that to you because we know you're very old. But Haywood looks great. He's 98. He looks amazing. He's still running marathons. But you would think at 98, when somebody starts to compliment you on anything, you just kind of roll your eyes and you don't really listen to it. Maybe that was a little gateway of
maybe
the New York Times is praising me. I would have think this is the coolest thing ever when I was 35, but I don't care. My foot hurts or whatever. So I don't know. Well, we need to hope for that. We need to hope for that because we do want mercy for everyone. We don't want anybody in hell.
Yeah. I'd still very much like to meet him in heaven, God willing.
Yes.
Well, we got also, they said he was hyperkinetic. I mean, we just sat through a presidency where we had a press saying that everything was normal with a particular president that everyone actually knew was not very cognitive,
sharper than ever.
Obama.
But well, that we'll just see if that sticks on the wall. But simply because the press was saying it, and they were shaming us into actually saying, well, this person is, kind of like Uncle Joe or Grandpa so and so. No, he's just stuttering. No, they're not really three lights there, right? There's four lights, right? You have to believe this lie. And, lies only hold up for a period of time. So, no, he wasn't hyperkinetic. This was what the journalist was saying. This is the hope that this individual who, well, rest in peace or whatever, or not peace, he's resting somewhere, but his legacy will stand for what it is historically. And it will stand, I think, in the same way that the gas that they made for the Jews during World War II, no one said that was a great product that they made. And this RU-486, we believe, will fall in history in the same way.
Yeah, and it's the same company. So when sometimes people throw out RU-486 came from the Nazis, and what they mean is the company that made the gas to kill the Jews also made RU-46. It was the same one. I'd be interested.
It's like a parent company or something.
Yeah,
it's like a parent company. I've got a little question.
2 generations or so.
I've got a few. We won't get into it, but I think the listener also has some questions about this so-called Catholic pro-life CEO. I mean, he had to be duped and duped and duped and duped and duped, and I don't know. Somebody should have been asking some questions.
It was a parent company. I don't know. Who knows?
And I don't know how that. I mean, it's it's like a Comcast owns Warner Brothers or whatever, and they make some little movie, and you can't know everything that's going on all the time. I understand that, but there just seemed to be a lot. Maybe that's actually what delayed it all this time. Honestly, there were a few people going, "Okay, this is kind of interesting. Are you out of your friggin' mind?" So maybe that helped delay it. We want to close. The one thing we forgot to mention to point to how hardcore he was is that, because now, and you're great at saying this, and a lot of former abortion providers saying this, like, it's the money. Follow the money. Abortion is money. He was a true zealot. He had no financial stake in mifepristone. That's remarkable. He invented it, though. I mean, you never hear that. He invented the abortion pill. He had no financial stake in it. He was just absolutely diabolical. So,
well, quite a legacy, but there's good news, you know. We've got something sitting here. That's the answer. A friend and colleague of mine, someone who I admire greatly, Dr. George Delgado, who we're going to be having on a podcast later this year. The Lord moved him to say, well, we're going to come up with the antidote for this, which is something that women have, and it's the hormone called progesterone. This fool here, he made anti-progesterone. Well, God just upped the ante. There's a saying that came from a song in the early 70s or 80s, and that is, solution is the dilution to pollution. And when you give a poison, what Dr. Delgado showed that if we give more of the good thing, more of the progesterone, we can dilute out, and it makes simple common sense. When a human being doesn't have enough thyroid hormone, the doctor gives them thyroid. When a woman is going through menopause and doesn't have enough estrogen, the doctor gives them estrogen. So the whole notion that this hasn't worked, we've just celebrated, I believe, 3 weeks ago with the abortion pill protocol that the 8,000th baby saved happened 2 to 3 weeks ago. And in my particular family, my wife, Daphne, has been a part of this for years. She was part of the ministry that saved baby number 149.
Oh, my goodness.
So she's been involved with it a while. So the good news is, and we've done podcasts about this. We're going to continue to talk about this. This is a man, I believe, that should be considered for the Nobel Peace Prize or the Nobel Prize in Medicine. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
And it's just a blessing. I just happened to last night get a phone call from the Abortion Pill Reversal Network, and I helped a young lady, 20 years old, who had taken the abortion pill 2 midnights ago, and we talked, and we found a 24-hour pharmacy, which just happens to be about a half mile from here, and she is now on that protocol. So we're reversing the course. We're part of this movement that God has put us in, and to God be the glory. We're going to win this thing.
Where can you've got, for those who are listening, you've got Dr. Delgado's book here. Where can folks pick this up?
Well, we just happen to have it in our store.
Oh, you can get it at our store?
At 40 Days for Life.
You can get it at Amazon, but who wants to do that? Go to the 40 Days for Life store. Buy the abortion pill.
40daysforlifegear.com.
We're going to have Dr. Delgado. I met him back in 2009, and just a phenomenal. These are the good doctors that we don't talk about, so that Dr. Baulieu does not have the last word.
Plus, we all know him. You could never imagine him saying something like, the fatalism. At that moment, I decided to stand up. It gave meaning to my life. He's like, no, we're going to help some women here, and here's how we're going to do it.
Yes, Dr. Delgado, not a lunatic.
Yeah.
Just for the record. So unlike some of these others. So thank you, Dr. Robinson. Thank you, Steve. Please rate, review, share this podcast. Also, if you have questions or comments, please put them on the YouTube page or email us at podcast@40daysforlife.com. And if you would like a French Revolution, dark, depressing podcast from us, please let us know at podcast@40daysforlife.com. It would give Steve and I great joy to talk about French atheism and death for an hour and 10 minutes. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. God bless you.